Alright, welcome back to another episode of Science with Surbeck. Today what we're going to be doing is talking about friction, and we're going to be doing so in a lab format. So what I have in front of me is the first part of the lab experiment, and we're going to measure the differences of friction on some certain common everyday objects. So what I have in front of me is 4 different surfaces. Number 1, I have the bare tabletop here in the science classroom. Number 2, I have some wax paper, and then I have some sandpaper, and then the last thing here, I have a notebook paper or just a regular copy paper here. And so what we're going to do is we are going to actually be able to measure, we're going to be actually measuring the amount of force that it takes to move along some of these surfaces. So what we are going to do first is we're just going to associate force to another common everyday object of marbles. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take the wax paper and I'm going to place it right here on the edge of the desk so that just a little bit of it hangs over the side. And so what I'm going to do after that is I am going to put a little bit of tape on here. And all the tape is doing is it's preventing the wax paper from sliding all over, and it kind of keeps it in place as we go through this experiment. Okay, so the next thing is I'm going to set up how exactly I'm going to measure, my force here. So what I have is just a wood block, and it's going to be placed onto the wax paper. And then what I'm going to have is my cup. Now my cup is attached to a string, which that string is just going to overhang here. And what we are going to do is we are going to look at static friction here. So how we measure this is we're going to place a marble in that cup. And if we have this wood block like we do on this surface, right now there's enough static friction to be able to have that wood stay still. I'm going to add enough marbles to where I am first going to see movement. At that point, we're going to record the number of marbles it took to move that wood block. So I am going to place just one at a time these marbles in the cup, and I am going to look for the first sign of movement. So I have 3 marbles, 4 marbles, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 20, 21, 22. Alright, so the wood block is starting to move as I add, and I put in 23 marbles into my wax paper. So underneath where it says wax paper and the number of marbles taken to move that is going to be 23. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to empty out my cup of marbles, and I'm going to replace the wax paper now with the sandpaper. So I'm just going to gently pull up the wax paper here, and I'm going to replace it with this sandpaper. Again, really rough here, and again, I'm going to have a little bit overhang, and we are going to just set this in motion here. So again, we have a little bit okay. Now again, I set my wood block, and what I'm going to start with, sandpaper is a lot rougher, so that means it's going to take a lot more to move that wood block. So I'm going to already start out with my 23 marbles in my particular cup. And so again, I'm just going to add and count. I already started out at 23 marbles. So here's 24, 25, 6, 7, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. Alright, so at this point I've emptied a whole bag of marbles that I had. So I'm going to obtain another bag of marbles. I'm at 54 marbles, and that wood block on sandpaper has not moved yet. So I'm going to grab another bag of marbles, see if we can't make this move with the addition of this bag of marbles here. So here comes marble 55, 6, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75. Okay, so at this point, the block has not moved at all. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to get out some actual weights to help us out with this. Because I'm going to tell you, I could fill that cup up with marbles, and the wood block, because it's on the sandpaper, is not going to move, most likely. Alright, so like I said, I got 75 marbles in there, and this wood block is on sandpaper, and I'm bringing out 100-gram weights. So I'm going to add 100-gram weights on top of this, and I'm looking for the first sign of movement of this wood block. So I added an additional 100 grams. Here comes another 100 grams. Still no movement. Here is my third 100 grams. There is 400 grams of weights plus those 75 marbles. And I still have no movement. So at this point, I'm at max capacity with my cup. I want you to put down this. On the sandpaper, you had 75 marbles plus 400 grams worth of weight, and the block did not move. So that means that the sandpaper, there's such great amount of friction that it is not allowing that block, the wood block, to move. So again, we did not get the wood block to move. Now what we're going to do, we're going to do the same exact thing, but we are going to not have sandpaper anymore. We're going to replace it just with some standard notebook paper. So I'm going to have, again, the notebook paper just barely overlap the edge of the tabletop here. And we are going to try to see how many marbles it takes to move the wood block on the notebook paper. Okay, so I'm going to empty my cup here, and we're going to restart with our empty cup of marbles. And so, again, the sandpaper is really rough surface. That means that it took 75 marbles and 400 grams, and we still did not have any movement on that wood block. So again, I'm going to reset this wood block here, and I am going to see how many marbles it takes to move the wood block on the notebook paper. So again, I'm going to go pretty fast here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, and what I'm going to do, I'm pretty full in that cup. I know you can't see it. I'm going to start adding my 100 grams weight to see if I can't get any movement on our wood block. So I'm going to add, I'm at 80 marbles, then add 100 grams. I saw first movement. You may have to back it up and watch that. But what I want you to put on your lab is that there was, or it took, for the notebook paper, 80 marbles plus 100 grams of weight. So to move the wood block, it took 80 marbles plus 100 grams of weight. All right, we're going to reset here, and we're going to do the same thing, just having the wood block on the bare tabletop. All right, so we reset here, or we're getting ready to, and again, all we're going to do here is empty our cup, and we're going to do our final measurement with our cup and talking about friction. So I'm just going to dump these out, and what we're going to do from here is we're going to do the same exact experiment, except we're going to do this on the bare tabletop. So again, I'm just going to remove the paper. I'm going to place the cup on the hook here, and then we are going to place marbles until we see this wood block move. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to do here, is I'm going to start putting marbles in. It's going to go pretty fast. I'm going to watch when the first sign of movement is for our wood block. And we're at, I forgot to count, but we're at 7 marbles, 8 marbles, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. All right, so I saw pretty significant movement at 44 marbles. So underneath where it says bearer table, we put 43 marbles to move that wood block. So a couple things just to overview this. That wax paper, remember we only had 23 before we saw significant movement in that wood block. The sandpaper, we couldn't get it to move. We put 75 marbles plus 400 grams worth of these weights, and we still could not get it to move. The notebook paper, it took 80 marbles plus 100 grams of weight to move it, and then the bare table took 44 marbles. So you can see the difference of that surface, the role that it plays into the amount of friction. The higher those marbles are, the greater amount of friction there was between the wood block and that particular surface. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to reset here, and we're going to do the back half of the lab. All right, so I've reset here for the back half of the lab. And so what I have are a couple of different items. Number one, I have these spring scales, and I'll bring this closer as I talk about it. I have this piece of string that's been tied together, and then I have a textbook. And so what I want to do is I want to measure the friction of this textbook on a couple different surfaces. But first, I want to bring this a little bit closer and show you our spring set. So this spring scale measures or can measure the mass in newtons. All right. So as you have an object get pulled by this bottom portion, it pulls this spring down, and this is calibrated to measure force in newtons. Okay. So we're going to use this combined with another one, and I am going to do each of these trials. And so how we're going to do this is we're going to get about halfway through this textbook. We're going to take this loop of inside the textbook, and now we have a nice little carrying handle for our textbook. And so underneath static friction trial 1, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this book with our spring scale, and I am going to just get it right before that book moves. So again, I'm going to pull the spring scale, and okay, so this spring scale, it maxed out, right? So it's over 5 newtons. That static friction is over 5 newtons. So I'm going to shift gears to a little bit stronger of a spring scale. Okay, so the spring scale here, what we are going to do is I'm going to pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it. Okay, I just have movement. Now, this particular spring scale here, I got to read out. Give me a second here. Let me redo that trial here. So again, I'm pulling just before it starts to move. And what it was about 6.1 newtons. So the static friction of trial 1 for our textbook is about 6.1 newtons. Now, our sliding friction, what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to the green scale here, and I'm going to get the book moving. And as I get the book moving, I'm going to read over my spring scale. So again, this is sliding friction trial 1. So we're going to move the textbook here, and again, it's a little bit more than 5 newtons, so I got to transition back to the little heavier duty spring scale. So the spring scale we start out with is this. Again, I'm getting the sliding friction moving, and this is reading out, right now it's reading out right about 4.9 newtons. So sliding friction for trial 1 is 4.9 newtons. Now we're going to get involved with rolling friction. So to simulate rolling friction, what I have is these dowel rods that I've cut down, and I'm going to put these dowel rods underneath my book. All right, I'm going to get a couple more so it can slide over our book, and this time I'm going to get this green spring scale and give it a try, give it a whirl first, and I am going to take this, all right, and I'm just going to start pulling the book, and you can already see that this thing is moving, and I'm going to reset because I wasn't able to get a reading off the spring scale here. But again, we start out here. I'm pulling the spring scale, and I got about 1.1 newtons. So the force for friction, of rolling friction on this textbook for trial 1 was 1.1 newtons. Now, I'm going to restart. I'm going to do all of those particular experiments 2 more times. And I'm just going to shout out the numbers here. So again, static friction right before it moves. All right, trial 2, static friction. I'm getting about 5.2 newtons. Now we'll go to moving friction. And again, I'm just going to get the book moving, and then I'm going to read out on my spring scale. Okay, trial 2, sliding friction is 5.1 newtons. Now I'm going to go back to my rolling friction for trial 2. Now I'm going to go back to my rolling friction trial 2. Again, I'm just going to put the dowel rods underneath the book here, and I'm going to get my little green scale, spring scale here, and I'm just going to get it moving. Okay, trial 2 for the rolling friction, I got 0.5 newtons. 0.5 newtons as my rolling friction. Gonna go through this one more time, and this will be static friction trial 3. And again, I'm gonna get it to where it's barely or almost moving. Okay, and here, right here for trial 3, static friction, I'm getting exactly 5 newtons. So we move to sliding friction across the desk. What we have here is this. I'm going to just start it moving, and our sliding friction this time is exactly 5.0 newtons. So trial 3, sliding friction, is 5.3 newtons. All right, our rolling friction, our last trial here. What we're going to do, we're going to get this rolling, and I'm going to read it out here in newtons. Let me reset. Wasn't able to get that read off. Okay, so for rolling friction, trial number 3, rolling friction is 0.4 newtons. All right, so what I need you to do, you have all of the data. You need to average each of the static, each of the sliding, and each of the rolling frictions. Average, remember, you add them all up, and you divide, in this case, by 3, because we did 3 of those trials. And what I need you to do after you're done is answer those analysis questions. All right, this concludes another episode of Science with Surbeck. So I hope you have enjoyed this particular lab experiment.